Hello, everybody. We are here for our Monday's edition of Ask DataCorps Live. I'm Jessica. This is Angel, and we have a special guest with us today. Angel, you want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. So this is Lisa Shasteen, and she helps us out with any kind of legal and compliance issues for our clients and anybody that we need to. And I thought it would be cool to bring her on because I'm talking about the horrors I keep finding when I do network assessments throughout businesses in the Bay Area. And there's a common misconception out there that unless you are, a medical related or financial related business, these things don't matter. And that's simply not true. There are so many misconceptions about that, and there are so many repercussions for really any kind of a business, whether you're in medical or not. So I figured, what better person to talk about that than the person who would be standing in defense of you whenever any issues like that come up. So we'll talk about 3 more of the horrors I keep finding, and we'll also talk about, what these things mean.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure.
We're always happy to have you. You're a fun guest.
Oh yeah, it's always fun when Lisa's here. So
last week we talked about, to sum up, we talked about a couple of things. We talked about having stale Active Directory computers, which means computers that are no longer being used but are still sort of connected to your network. We talked about former employees who've not been completely removed from all your network, all their passwords and things like that.
I'm surprised actually how often I find that. We talked about that last week, that we do find that often.
Yeah.
And Lisa, so I mean, that what kind of things trigger in your mind when you hear that there are employee accounts that are still active on a network even after the employee's been terminated?
Okay, how much time do you have? I'm just kidding. No, I mean, a lot of things come to mind. One of the most important things would be, do those people still have access to your computer? Let's say they're a former employee. Did they leave on good terms? Are they still connected to the network? And what can they do? How can they get in? So obviously, having good policies for employee disengagement and taking their credentials out of the system is really essential for network security, because they can come in from home where God knows what they've got at their fingertips or who they've got at their fingertips, and can get in your computer system and really mess it up. So.
Right.
Absolutely. So.
And then the last thing we talked about was having outdated or out of support operating systems and software, which led to our discussion about Petya and OneCry, and the big things have been in the news a lot lately. But today, sort of on that same vein, our number 7 top 10 horror that you keep finding all over the place in all kinds of people's systems is having an outdated or a disabled or no antivirus at all.
Yeah, and this, this is a bit of a touchy subject because I've also talked about how antivirus is only about 4% effective. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of people say, well, then why even bother with it? But the reality is that if that 4% is what protects you, I'll take it. I'll take every little bit of protection, because protection's all about layers. So it's an important layer to have. However, there may be some legitimate reasons to not have antivirus or to have it disabled. There's absolutely never a situation where it's okay to have it outdated, right?
Right.
But, Lisa, what are some situations where it is appropriate to have antivirus disabled?
Well, I would think that if you're trying to install something, if there's something working on your network that interferes with that particular antivirus product, then you would need to disable it. However, I say that with a bunch of caveats, that you really have to have other protections in place. The other controls are critical, because if you are depending on that antivirus and then disable it and have no other controls or protections, then you are definitely at risk. If you let's say you're working at a very highly sensitive facility, they do cancer research or something, for example, you may disconnect that machine from the internet. It may not have any access to the internet. So at that point, let's say the antivirus is slowing down your research or your calculations, perhaps that is a time when you would disable it. I wouldn't say that I disable it at all times, even then, because there are other ways people can mess with your computer. But
absolutely. There are times when you need to disable it on servers or not install it at all on servers for performance reasons or other reasons. But the important part that Lisa alluded to here is that you have other compensating controls to make up for that. So you have additional checks and balances. Last week we talked about how there are some situations where you just can't get away from having a Windows XP computer. For example, if you've got an industrial control system where they haven't upgraded or there's going to be a significant expense to upgrade the system so that you can get a newer operating system, the important part is that you document it, right? Mm-hmm. And that you understand the risks and that you take reasonable steps to mitigate those risks.
Well, I think you make a really great point, Angel. You know, the whole perspective for lawyers here is, and for the regulators that would enforce these things against our wonderful business community, is that you have to take reasonable steps. You have to take a reasonable approach to security. Nobody's asking you to have perfect security. Nobody thinks you should be perfect. But you do have to use at least what is reasonable in your industry and for you. So, and by the way, just because it's not economically feasible is not necessarily going to be something that a regulator is going to listen to, because you may think it's not economically feasible, but they may view it as economically feasible. So money is one of those areas that's a little bit dicey to think about in the reasonableness category. But from a standpoint of following your peers and doing what everybody knows to do, such as having antivirus, anti-malware protection, you better have some.
Now, you mentioned regulators a lot. And if you're a medical practice or a financial services company, you know the word. But you know, let's just say you're a courier service.
Okay, let's talk about that. This is another area. You know, a lot of the industries. When in the United States, we do not have an overarching cybersecurity law. There's no federal law that governs everybody about cybersecurity and what your duties are. Each state obviously has different laws, but from a standpoint of regulation or enforcement, in the state of Florida at least, we have the FDLE, and we have the Attorney General's office, who is really going to look at this. We have a statute for incident response, and there's sort of a 20/20 hindsight review of your practices. So just don't get caught up in that. Let's take a reasonable approach up front. Best thing is to get a risk assessment, look at your technology, make sure you've got reasonable protections in place, and then move on with your business.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the regulators. We talked a little bit about the you know, different types of businesses, and generally, you know, we don't think about a lot of businesses that deal with, you know, say blue collar workforces and whatnot. They're not thinking regulators, but you know, even those employees. The business is going to have information about those employees stored, and that then can cross the line into, you know, going just from a privacy law and maybe moving in as far as going into HIPAA law. So even a business that you would not imagine, you know, say you're a plumber or HVAC company, you would not imagine would have these privacy issues. When you start looking at the type of data they keep about employees, that starts becoming really important.
Well,
data like what? Sorry.
Sure. So their bank accounts, any information
Social
about
security
insurance,
numbers.
social security numbers. You know, if the company provides health insurance for their employees,
job application information,
job
information
application,
about
yeah.
their children, you know, for insurance, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, it really starts to become serious, and that's why, you know, I've been asked a lot of times, you know, why do you bring Lisa into this conversation so often? And that is because, first off, the word reasonable is used in a lot of privacy laws, and the best person equipped to handle what that word reasonable is not your IT person. It's really going to be somebody that works with words and works with processes, and that's going to be an attorney. And the other part of it is, there are so many ways that the privacy laws, the way they're written, they can explode into just a bunny trail. And so a business that normally may not be involved in anything having to do with HIPAA or having to do with any other kind of privacy law, all of a sudden has a privacy law problem that they're facing.
Well, and Angel, you're making another good point, and what I wanted to just point out to people, in case you don't know, is that there are 276 laws related to privacy and cybersecurity in the United States. 276.
Wow.
So if you don't think it applies to you, I'll bet you I can find a few that do.
Yeah.
But the one federal group that seems to be taking a very broad view of their jurisdiction over businesses and people is the FTC. The FTC is charged with consumer protection.
That's the Federal Trade Commission?
That's exactly right. The Federal Trade Commission. Sorry, I hate to talk in acronyms. Thanks for reminding me. So the Federal Trade Commission has as one of their responsibilities protection against unfair and deceptive trade practices. And many companies have been sued and been fined as a result of not complying with their own privacy policies or other things that can be related to cybersecurity and privacy. So even your security efforts can be under review by the FTC. So it's a real weird and arcane area, and it's developing fairly quickly. The FTC is trying to take a very reasonable view. They really are. But at the same time, you just don't want to get into that mix.
Right.
So I can already hear a lot of the small business owners that I know saying, well, how are they going to find out about me? Nobody's looking at me. I'm just a one-man band, or I only have 5 employees. How are they going to end up being, drawing the eye of someone where they would need to be concerned about these things?
Well, a consumer, again, they are responsible for protecting consumers. So if let's say you make a statement to consumers that this is how we handle your data, and then the consumer is somehow hacked or phished as a result of something in an email from you, and then complains to the FTC. And generally, 78% of the data incidents are discovered by clients and not by the businesses themselves. So that's a scary thing. The last thing you want to do is have your client tell you, "Hey, you've been hacked."
Yeah.
So that's how it happens. Is one of your customers gets hurt and they start complaining to the FTC.
I see.
Or someone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think we beat that one down pretty well.
Too much.
Why don't we go and we got a few minutes left. Why don't we continue on? What's our next item?
Number 6 is having no next-gen firewall.
Okay.
And the note that you gave me was that a sub $500 router cannot handle today's security needs.
It simply can't. So today's firewalls that are up to the task are going to be updated regularly. We update ours every 15 minutes with the latest definitions. So they're going to be updated regularly. They're going to be receiving virus definitions. They're going to be receiving attack definitions. All sorts of information, basically, that's being gathered real time and compiled by the manufacturer so that the firewall can best defend your network against threats. And so we want those firewalls updated regularly. Well, it costs money to do that. So that's why the firewalls are tied to a subscription. Now what we're finding is a lot of these next-gen firewalls also come priced to sell. So many of them that are on the $400 or $500 range don't really have the horsepower to do more than maybe a 3-person office. So then there's constant complaints about slowness and whatnot. So you have to continue to beef them up. The other problem we're finding is that after about 2 or 3 years, a lot of these firewalls just aren't up to the task, not because it's bad hardware or bad design, but we're seeing over 200,000 new malware threats every day.
Wow.
So with that, that's a lot of information to be adding to the firewall every day on how to detect these threats. And so they're being overwhelmed very quickly, a lot faster than manufacturers even expected. So that's why you want to make sure, and if you've got a 10, 20-person office, you're probably going to be wanting to buy a firewall for 50 to 75 people, because that's what it's going to take. That's the type of horsepower that's going to take to keep you safe.
Angel, can I ask you a question about
Yeah,
that?
absolutely, please.
So I have clients who say, well, if I have that kind of firewall protection, what do I need endpoint security for?
So that's a great question, and I alluded to it earlier. You want layers of protection. Okay? The way that we catch and the way that a lot of threats are caught is because they set off multiple alarms, or sometimes they only set off one alarm, and then we got to go hunt and see what that alarm was. And that alarm may not be a firewall. That alarm may be a report that we review on a regular basis that says, hey, there's an anomaly here. So again, we want multiple layers and multiple places, kind of like if you set up, multiple entry points. If you have multiple entry points, you don't just put the alarm on one entry point. You kind of put them everywhere in your house. And so you want multiple things watching over the network, watching over the endpoints. And the endpoint security, like your antivirus software, only focuses on your computer. The network firewall looks at the traffic that's moving through it, in and outbound.
I have a lot of clients who, when I walk in the door, at first, they have only endpoint protection. They don't use a firewall.
That's very common.
Isn't that, wouldn't you say that's the argument the other direction?
Yeah, it is. And I often see, when I walk in the door to a prospect, that they have whatever came from Spectrum or Frontier. And that's it. And they think that keeps them safe. And it just simply isn't enough. That hardware was designed for home use. Believe it or not, even in businesses, that hardware was designed for home use. It was never intended for use in business. So you've got to invest a little bit of money in your endpoint, in your firewall security.
Awesome.
Cool.
That sounds great.
Did we beat that one down now?
I feel like, now I know what the word endpoint security means.
Yeah. It's
I'm
just
learning.
Fancy people talk for antivirus.
For antivirus software,
On your
I did
little
pick that up
computer.
eventually, Yeah, we're good. It's good. And so then that leaves us down here to number 5, which is actually pretty closely related, which is disabling your Windows firewall without a cause.
Absolutely, and I wrote without a cause for a very, very specific reason. So there are legacy programs and software that just won't run with the Windows Firewall network programs. I think it's unfortunate that in this day and age, those programs are still being written that way. But we have to deal with reality. So when we go into a business, the very last thing we want to do is put them out of business because we overwhelmed their security. So what we have to do then is we have to look for alternate ways, or we have to very surgically navigate through that program to see what ports are necessary to open on the firewall to do it. But just disabling Windows Firewall, I know people like this. Just disabling Windows Firewall because it's Windows Firewall and I don't like Microsoft anything, that's not a good idea.
Or because you don't want to do all the updates all the time. Or,
Absolutely.
you just want to get on and type an email and it wants you to make an update and it's going to take 20 minutes and you don't have 20 minutes and so you just turn
Absolutely. I know it's frustrating.
Yeah.
But I've said it before, security isn't convenient.
No.
It's not convenient to use a key to get into your house. It would be much better if I could just walk in. But we use it because we don't want the bad guys in there.
You know what I think about? I think about how long it takes me to buckle my 3 children into their car safety seats when, my mom's generation would just throw us all in the back of the station wagon.
There you go.
Same thing.
Not convenient, but we do it because we care.
Right.
And because we love what we have, or we love those kids. We know we need to protect that we're holding in value. And so we take that extra step of inconvenience in order to preserve that. So that's why we do it, not because, just because it's fun.
But just a little perspective on that. There was a 2015 study by IBM Poneman, and it pointed out that for a business, the cost of a breach, 50% of it, literally 50%, was lost productivity and clients walking out the door without ever telling you a word. So 50% of your business and your money walks out the door if you're not careful. And is it really worth that? I mean, 50% of your business, that's your livelihood. So I would say, boy, I think I can live with a little minute update on my computer for whatever program's trying to update itself. Generally, you can work through most of these updates anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not that big of a deal. Or go check your email, which everybody loves to do anyway, or text somebody, which everybody's in love with. So
Update your
coffee.
Facebook.
right.
Or go get coffee.
Yeah, go get
Imagine
coffee.
Coffee's
Don't you dare
important.
go to Facebook either. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, that's just my little pet peeve. But anyway.
So we're on
Is that-
Facebook here.
yeah.
But yeah, All right, so that was our 3 for this week.
Awesome.
Cool.
So, Lisa, can you tell everybody where they can find you if they're looking for your help?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much. You can actually go to www.shasteenpercy.com. That's SHASTEENPERCY.com.
Awesome.
Cool.
Or you can always call us.
Yeah, you can call us.
Because
Call
we've-
DTS.
Because we've got Lisa on speed dial.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, we do.
As if speed dial was still a thing that people use right now, right?
Yeah, so cool. All right, well, if that's it, then let's wrap it up. And
That's awesome. We appreciate you tuning in today, and we are looking forward to running you down through the last of our horrors. If you're one of the people that we would describe in one of these scenarios today, please get yourself a firewall, get yourself some antivirus, or give us a call so we can do it for you.
And you're not alone, by the way.
And not just any antivirus. As I said last week, the federal government has blacklisted Kaspersky antivirus out of the GSA schedule, so you can watch my video on that.
Yeah.
So don't use Kaspersky if you like your privacy.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much, everybody, and we will see you next week.
See you later.